250 Maulana Azad Model Schools were created to provide quality education to minority students in Karnataka. On paper, they represent inclusion, opportunity, and constitutional commitment. On the ground, however, a very different picture is emerging. A preliminary study by the Movement for Justice in Bengaluru across 17 Maulana Azad Model Schools has found schools without basic classrooms, unusable toilets, no laboratories or libraries, and an alarming shortage of teachers and headmasters. This is happening despite the government announcing hundreds of crores of rupees for minority welfare, including 226 crore rupees specifically earmarked for these schools. What has gone wrong? Where did the money go? And who is accountable when children's right to education and dignity is compromised? To discuss these findings and the road ahead, we are joined by Syed Akmal Razvi, Secretary for Movement for Justice, who was directly involved in the study. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. And let me first ask you that what prompted you to start the study or to make an effort to understand how Maulana Azad model schools are functioning in Bangalore?
You see, the newspaper reports were there, including respected newspapers like the Hindu, that there are no regular teachers in Maulana Azad schools. The results of the 10th standard were pathetic, with some schools reporting 0 pass in the 10th standard. Overall, the results were pretty shocking. And then there are several news reports that there are no toilets, and in some places the toilets are so dirty that nobody can even dream of using them. And also there was this question of not being a separate toilet for girl students. There was sufficient amount of money that the Honorable Chief Minister had allocated. And we found that the entire amount was probably allocated only for infrastructure, and there was no, let me say, how do I say, there was no targeted thing at how they could improve the outcomes of this study. The entire money was being allocated only for creating infrastructure, which was still poor. So that's why we thought, let's do a study and set them right, because it's the future of our children, it's the future generations who are going to become the tax-paying citizens of this country at some point of time. And if you don't provide them with adequate education, ultimately the country will suffer. So that was the whole idea behind doing this.
And what did you find in the study? How, because this was a ground level study across 17 schools in Bangalore. So what did you find? What was shocking? What really seemed surprising for you?
The most shocking thing was that there were joint classes for 2 grades. I'm sure that everybody realizes when they are teaching their children that having to teach a combined class is nearly impossible. And therefore, it was not at all surprising that the results were so bad. There were combined classes, and the worst part was classes in balconies and on really leaking infrastructure. If the rains came, the classrooms are flooded with water, and nothing seems to be going right. All these students were suffering immensely. Hardly any permanent teachers. Many of them were contract teachers, and the contract teachers have very low salary. And there's no motivation for them to really perform anything, and you are really getting pretty substandard teachers. So that was the shocking part. The saving grace was that wherever the local community became involved, and wherever the regular headmaster or headmistress, as the case may be, was committed to the school, there were very, very good outcomes. Some NGOs had on their own built science classrooms, labs, and therefore these these were doing pretty well. And one of the schools had 100% pass rate.
Yes.
So wherever the community,
Pagalipura, if I'm not wrong.
yeah. So these were the schools that were doing extremely well because of the involvement of the regular headmaster and the regular teachers being there, and in addition the community and the people getting involved. So the takeaway was that wherever there are good permanent teachers and wherever the community is involved, the schools are doing better.
So overall, when we talk about the 17 schools, most of them lacked infrastructure, basic infrastructure things like playground, laboratories, and also the teachers. And some schools even did not have permanent headmasters. Like that was also a problem in some
Most
schools.
of them. Most of them did not have permanent headmasters, and that was really affecting it. And the other thing was that that's just a policy level decision. We will try and send our representations to the government. Many students here are migrant students, and the rule is that all Maulana Azad schools should have Kannada as the first language. These students are not even capable of passing Kannada as a third language, and therefore trying to force them to study it as a first language is having a very bad effect on that. So that's a policy decision. We will take it up with the government at an appropriate time.
Also, in the earlier you had mentioned about how government has already provided money for Maulana Azad Model Schools, yet most of this is going only for infrastructure, and even in that we see that even the infrastructure is bare minimum, like barely functional for a school. This year there was around 126 crore for the maintenance of the school and 100 crore for additional classrooms. That was the allocation for financial year 2025 to 26. So
Certainly.
when such a huge amount of money is going for the schools itself, and yet the basic facilities are not really maintained, like you mentioned about how there is water leaking in the classrooms itself, there are lack of classrooms. So where do you think the money has gone over the years, given that infrastructure problems still remain?
You see, when your focus is not on the right things, I'm sure that if it was our own children, we would have first focused on ensuring that we have better teachers rather than on having a first class classroom or something like that. There's something fundamentally wrong in the way the money has been allocated. And obviously, the oversight is very poor. Otherwise, this kind of money should have been more than enough to build a proper infrastructure. If you don't have a person to clean the toilets and you keep on investing on toilets, what's the point? If the toilets are unusable and you have spent a lot of money to build a toilet, but you don't have people who can clean it up, obviously there's something wrong in how we are allocating the money and how the money is being utilized and how we are not focusing on the things that actually matter for the students.
Right, the
So
basic requirement for
it's really
education.
shocking. It's shocking. नहीं होना चाहिए था ऐसा. पैसा का सही इस्तेमाल होना चाहिए था. We have no complaint against the government as such to the limited extent of the fact that they have allocated money. But our complaint is that the oversight and the heads under which the allocation should have been made need to be better focused on outcomes rather than building an infrastructure which is not usable.
So what is existing that has to be made better rather than just creating something new. There is no
Exactly.
financial problem as of now.
You see, the issue is that the focus is on the wrong things. If you focus correctly and provide extra classrooms where the classes are being combined, that's the first thing that you need to do, rather than building more classrooms where they are not yet required. And there is probably enough money. Somebody has to do a feasibility study and understand where the money can be spent properly to ensure that there are at least separate classes for different grades, and the poor students are not forced to sit in balconies and verandas and combined classes. That's the first thing to do. So the focus is completely off the track, is what we understand. And also, we are very concerned that we don't have appropriate teachers and the guest teachers are not paid in time, and nor is their salary enough for them to sustain also. So somewhere the government focus has to shift from creating infrastructure to actually investing in the human resources which can make the children better citizens of this country in the near future.
Right. Uh, Also, in some of the schools, we saw that the student ratio is itself very low. I think in Kalasipalia, there are only 24 students that are functioning in that building, due to which there is a letter already given to the government to close it. So, what is happening? Like, are some schools having classrooms but not enough students? Because even when migration students come into the picture, sometimes they also shift. There is high dropout rates also. So,
You see, the headmistress The headmistress and the local community has to play a big role in this. If the headmistress is not motivated enough to make it successful, it is bound to fail. As I have been repeatedly saying, the correct thing is to focus on making the schools a place of learning and focusing on the human resources rather than on physical infrastructure at the present. There are many schools, you have pointed out one, where the student ratio is too low. And the only reason is that the headmistress is not motivated enough. There's no local community involvement. The NGOs are not taking part to do something about it. The need is there. The government has the resources to set these things right. I think what lacks is the focus on the human resources, the outcomes, and of course, motivated headmistress and committed teachers is what will make a difference.
So, also, why has the state failed to appoint permanent teachers and even headmasters in some schools? Despite years of operations, like it was in 2017 when MAMS schools were started to set up in Bangalore, in Karnataka. So, why is there failure to have permanent teachers after so many years?
The government, with due respects to it, the focus today is on showing glittering infrastructure and not concentrating on what really matters for the students and for the future generations. I think just allotting budget and spending on infrastructure helps a lot of people in making money. But the general thing that should be concentrated upon is to create the necessary human resources. And as you have rightly pointed out, the trouble is that the money is there. And as I have been repeatedly telling you, that the focus has to shift from construction of infrastructure and concentrate more on human resources. And the government, for some reason, has put a stop to recruitments. If you see that the recruitments are at probably a near all-time low. The government just doesn't want to recruit people, and they try to, I think there are budget constraints. It needs money for big ticket, glitzy infrastructure, and allocating budget and spending money on human resources is not a priority right now. And I think unless the community and all of us citizens of this country take it up individually and collectively and tell the government to focus more on creating proper human resources, which will actually help the economy in the long run. I think the government is taking pretty short-term view of things rather than taking long-term view of making these students tax-paying citizens in future.
So, in your assessment, like when you say that there is money, the government has allotted a good amount of money for the schools. Is this a case of like corruption, that there is not proper focus or mismanagement of the amount or the resources, or just a deliberate neglect that happens when it comes to minority schools?
I think we are living in times where there's instant gratification for us, and also the government also only looks at projects which make headlines. It's a very attractive headline to say 4,000 crores allotted for minorities. Rather than saying that, okay, 4,000 crores, a substantial money would be spent on securing the future of the people for better learning outcomes and for better utilization of the funds. I think today the focus is on announcing big ticket projects, and there's too much of emphasis on construction because there's a whole nexus between various stakeholders, and there's a lot of money to be made in construction, and therefore the government doesn't want to take the responsibility of finding money for good quality teachers and good quality government servants. I think that's the area which is lacking, and I think collectively, unless we take it up, no government will wishes to do these things, because these are not headline making news. Imagine if the government says that we have appointed 10 very good teachers and compare it to say I have allotted 1,000 crores for minorities. The headline would obviously be 1,000 crores for minorities, and appointing 10 teachers would not even be a headline. So this is more of a headline management kind of a situation that we are in this
thing
country.
that what comes up
Absolutely.
in the news.
Absolutely. This is more about public relations rather than actually looking at things which really matter for the country. That's the sad part of it.
Also, when you did this study, how where all, because it's such a grave crisis where the schools are barely functioning, and it obviously affects the quality of education that students are receiving and how they are learning, especially from class 6 to 10, higher education schools. So how did it affect the girl students and migrated students? Was there a similar experiences like all the other children, or did their experience differ?
The part was that both the migrant students were completely demotivated because of failing again and again. And I think the dropout rates are pretty high. And of course, you see, I think the government has to relook at, and we also have to relook at how we look at education. Should we be rule-minded that, I mean, I'm sure that I love my Kannada language. I'm very comfortable. And everybody should be proud of every language, and it's a heritage. But to put an undue burden on the student by making it compulsory for him to have Kannada as the first language, I think is not right. The government has to sit down and look at the future of these students. And of course, they should learn Kannada. They will learn Kannada. As a third language, it can be continued. I think they need to make a drastic change of ensuring that Kannada is not the first language, and the student should have the option of either having it as the first, second, or the third language. That would be a policy change that we would try and impress upon the government. Let's see how it goes.
Also, what about the girl students? Because there is lack of washroom facility in the schools. Do they have more difficulty, or were
That's the
there?
most shocking part. The girl students, I'm sure the dropout would be very high, or they would be missing classes because they have to go home to use the washroom and come back. So there would be absenteeism, and there would be obviously even there's a particular place where the staff and the students have a common dirty toilet. So you can imagine if they are unable to use the toilet, I'm sure that we didn't ask them, and because we didn't feel appropriate to ask them what they were doing. But I'm sure that it's really very, very troublesome for them to manage without a proper toilet and a separate clean toilet. And unless you have people to clean those toilets, there's no point in building more toilets, and it doesn't make any sense.
Also, apart from the school facilities, the uniforms, midday meals, those are also a part of the program. So, how was the quality on these aspects?
We had a bad experience as far as the uniforms are concerned. The material was pretty substandard. And the school uniforms, according to the students, wouldn't last for more than 6 months. And therefore, they were pretty shabby. They became pretty shabby at the end of those times. So somewhere the quality control, we couldn't check on the meals part of it. We will try and see how we can do a study on that also. But the uniforms are pretty shabby, and substandard quality of fabrics were used. Because you have to also understand that these students are rugged, and therefore the quality of the fabric has to be a little better for them to last the whole year. So that's a matter of great concern. We will raise it up, but that's a solvable problem.
Okay.
Because the budget is there, everything is there. The problem that looks daunting is to have those additional classrooms and not force the children to have combined classes, and to ensure that they don't have to sit in the balconies and verandas for their classes.
So, what worked well? Because one of the schools, the Kagalipura branch, they had 100% SSLC results. So, what's working in schools that have positive results as compared to the other schools? What's really working in
Yeah,
their favor?
we would say four things were there. One was a very committed and motivated headmaster or headmistress, as the case may be. And the second thing was a decent infrastructure, separate classrooms, clean toilets, separate toilets for girls and boys. The third thing was the interest of the local NGOs who went around to the companies around the area, and from their CSR funds got some science labs constructed in those schools, which helped in a big way. And of course, the local community and the involvement of the parents. The schools which have faltered badly are the schools where the parents are not at all interested in the studies and they are sending the children just for the formality of it. These were the schools where the parents were motivated. And of course, what we found is in almost all the schools, there was no SDMC. So that's the sad part, because if you are not involving there's no monitoring committee on the schools, of the schools, then you have a situation where there's no check and balance, and worldwide things work only when there are checks and balances.
So it's like at the systemic also they were much better because they had better infrastructure, and also there was a lot of motivation of the staff, they
Absolutely.
principals and teachers
Especially
as
the
well.
staff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The permanent teachers and the headmistress or the headmaster, they play a very big role. If they are motivated and if they are committed to it, they are making wonderful progress. That's the thing that came out in our study.
Also, have you heard anything from any officials from minority department or education or even the state government? Have you heard anything from them regarding the concerns that you've brought up in the study?
Uh, I think right now they are too busy with the session in Belgaum. Once they come back, we will definitely try and give representations. We have started the process. We are just waiting for the session to get over and the government to settle. We have commitment from some retired IAS officers also, who are willing to take up the cause and try and uh, uh, monitor these schools, make them better, and they have assured us that they will take the responsibility and do something about it. We are looking forward to people getting involved in it, and we'll see what best we can do to ensure that there are permanent headmasters, headmistresses, and we will try and see that the quality teachers are there. We'll try and see how we can incentivize the existing teachers for better performance. These are things that require changes at the policy level. They require changes in the mindset. And our focus would be to ensure that the next year's budget has something for human resources rather than on pure infrastructure.
So you did clearly mention one of the solutions that to focus on human resources, but apart from that, what are the other immediate steps that the government, that the community has to take for these schools to actually do the serve the purpose that they were mainly established for?
I think unless you have proper science labs and children are able to touch and experiment with things, children are not going to enjoy studies. I think the correct way to go is to ensure that the children experience things. We need appropriate science labs. We need a playground for them to play, and we need to ensure their wholesome development, just as we would like our children to be. I think we owe a responsibility to the people who are left behind economically, that they also have the same kind of facility that our own children have. And it's everybody's responsibility to try and see whatever they can do to ensure that this happens across the country for everybody. Nobody should be left behind is what we think is the correct thing to take it forward.
Okay, so majorly focusing on giving appropriate infrastructure as well as focusing on the human resource aspect would solve a
Absolutely.
lot of problems that the schools are currently facing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it applies across the budget. It's not only about the minorities. In across the entire allocation of the budget by the government, uh, what I feel is that in many places we are concentrating too much on the physical infrastructure and not concentrating on the human resources that are required to put this physical infrastructure to appropriate use.
So more human energy and motivation to keep it long going rather
Absolutely.
than just building up
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing the insight
No,
and giving us the time.
thank you very much for having me on the show. Thank you so much.